Hello and welcome to Sportstar's coverage of Indian football. And the scene is not looking that great at the moment. India has lost to lower ranked Hong Kong, and there have been a lot of discussions about the future of the manager. There have been discussions about the people in power in the All India Football Federation. And I have with me my colleague Aashin Prasad, and we'll be discussing what is going wrong with the men's national team at the moment, especially at a time when its chances of qualifying for the AFC Asian Cup look practically very, very bleak. So, Ashin, we'd like to start with what do you think went wrong in Manolo's spell so far, especially because he has failed to win any competitive match for that matter, and the only win was a friendly against Maldives.
Uh, yeah, I mean, this has been the case for with Indian football for quite some time. We haven't had many pleasant topics to discuss when it comes to the national team for some time now. And yeah, there was a lot of optimism which came with Manolo when he joined the national team. But considering when it also came with the caveat of him being in a dual role with FC Goa in the Indian Super League. But in terms of the results, it's been pretty poor. Performances have been like up and down. I thought like against Hong Kong was one of their better displays. They did have some chances to put Hong Kong away, and Hong Kong was not great as well. They weren't, despite being the home team. I think they were the poor team that day. But unfortunately for us, an error from Vishal K undid all the work, and also our uh, the persisting issue with the forwards, us not being able to score goals consistently, uh, came to be an issue again on that night. Ashik had a terrific chance to put away. A professional footballer not being able to use his weaker foot,
Yeah.
now inexcusable in that situation. Leston Colasso also had a good chance in the
Yeah.
second half. So all in all, I think that was a game which you can't put it squarely on the coach. The coach has also had mixed results, but Hong Kong should have been done. The game against Hong Kong should have been a better display from the players, which I
Mhm.
feel like they didn't do. Yeah, in terms of Manolo, you could see that the defensive numbers have slightly been better, but in terms of the attacking output has not been great. Like you have to also look at like he started his tenure without Sunil Chetri,
Mhm.
and he then like called on Chetri to come back, and that also hasn't given him the best results. But yeah, all in all, it doesn't look good for Manolo himself now.
Mhm. I know. I personally feel that Manolo was given a squad which lacked a number of important players. Especially Ashik came in much later on, back from his injury and was not a regular starter for Mohan Bagan, especially at a role where he was a wide midfielder under Steam match and Mohan Bagan's when he was previously fit before the Kings Cup and the injury against Iraq. When he came back, he started playing as a fullback and then playing for Steam match, he moved up the pitch and then played a much central role against Hong Kong, which also did not turn out well. So I think there was lack of planning entirely from the Marcus camp and the India camp of which players to select and who to play. I think if a player is playing as a fullback for most of the season after coming back from injury, you cannot play him central forward or shifting towards center in a competitive AFC Asian Cup qualifier. I think experimenting those things against Maldives would have been a better idea, where he did not he played sort of a wider role. So in those aspects, I think there was clear lack of planning from Marcus's side, and especially when we compare him with a defensive minded coach, whereas Stimac was a very attacking minded coach. If we look at Constantine, who started with a rather defensive minded approach, he was gifted with a lot of technically gifted players. I mean, when you look at Anirudh Thapa in that era, when Constantine was in charge, was a very technically gifted player, and Thapa has not been in the scheme of things for Marquez at all. And Thapa's impact we saw in Chennai in FC peak Thapa was something of a very different beast. We could not see that player there. We saw Brandon Fernandez come in and be a rather inconsistent player. He has been one of India's best players in the last couple of years, but I think injuries has spoiled his game time a little. But do you think
See, but
there could
that's the
have
thing, right?
been?
Like with
Yeah.
most of these players, they have been the attacking players have been very inconsistent. Tapa, the form which he showed in Chennai FC, he's
Hmm.
not been able to show that
Hmm.
consistently for Mohan Bagan.
Hmm.
He's been playing in a
Number six role.
star-studded team there. Like his playing time has been limited. I feel like he's been being played out of position in Mohan
Correct.
Bagan,
Hmm.
and lack of form and game time has cost him his place with Manolo. I don't think we have seen much of uh, Tapa under Manolo.
Hmm.
Same goes for Sahal.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, so it's not just a case with Brandon. It's been a case with like most of the attacking players in the Indian team.
Hmm. And also, I think a couple of other factors of the field also come into the fray when we are talking about a clear conflict of interest. When you have a coach of the national team and a top flight club managing you, if any player is picked from that team, the players at the back of the mind are bound to think about whether or not a bias is coming into play. And I think that also would have created a sort of rift within
Mhm.
the dressing room, and especially when the morale is this low, it would already hit them. So I think
But
multiple
did you
factors.
feel that there was a case of the coach going for his the players who he's familiar with?
I think there was some cases I would genuinely say, because I saw the India versus Bangladesh game where I think Suresh Singh would have done a much better job in a position where Ayush Deb Chetri played.
Mm.
I think Ayush has been really good in the Indian Super League, but Suresh at the international level has been much better.
Mm.
So I think Ayush's chance there. Uh, kind of, and he was entirely marked in a way where he was absolutely not visible on the field. So when you see those kind of performances from players, you see Udanta Singh coming back and not making the mark that he used to. uh, Both the players again coming up for playing for FC Goa.
Mm.
Those are questions which players would keep asking among
Yeah.
themselves, especially at a time when you have other players, other wingers like PV Vishnu
Mm.
playing really well for East Bengal, not getting a chance. In Bengaluru FC, a lot of players are playing well and not getting a chance. I think Venkatesh,
Mm.
the winger,
Yeah.
played really well, did not get a chance. So when you see those players missing out on a national team spot, and Chetri, Ayush Dev Chetri, or maybe Udanta failing to impress
Mm.
in that level, those questions start slowly creeping in,
Mm.
and that would
I mean,
definitely harm.
the point which you were talking about, like it is valid where uh, when he came, you took up the job in a tricky scenario, right? Like he can't get out of the FC
Mhm.
Goa job, but at the same time he wanted to coach the national team
Mhm.
also. But that also puts him in a very difficult with the players in the national team.
Mhm.
But as a coach, also he would also want to with the short time which he has for training, he would also want to get the players who he thinks can
Mhm.
execute his ideas
Yeah.
better. So that way, I can understand why Manolo
Correct.
did
Yeah.
that. But then I don't know how whether he was able to balance that, like those issues within the dressing room.
Yeah.
Uh, we don't know whether it is an issue, but it seems like now that he's come to the end of his contract with FC Goa, uh, there is an opportunity for him to get rid of all that bias which
Yeah.
probably people think he might have. But do you think like he will be the coach going forward?
I think it's very unlikely for Manolo to go ahead, especially at a time, because Manolo is one of the most frank managers that you can talk to. You sit in a press conference, he's like the Simon Grayson of Bengaluru FC, who doesn't mince his words. He just comes up and tells you what is correct and what is not. And he has been very.
Stimac was also like that.
Steam match was also like that at a point of time, but Steam match was less of a defeatist after matches. I think Stimac complained a little more, but Marquez concedes defeat a little easily
Mm.
after the press conferences. So when you look at his press conferences, he's like, "Yeah, we were wrong. We played bad." And Stimac was, "This is where we were wrong." So this was the clear difference, and that is why when you see Manolo Marquez saying that, "Well, this is the condition of Indian football, but you were given the time to change it, but you couldn't." So when you have those kind of defeatist answers, I think they also don't help the cause of national team players who are struggling. Also, it will be poor of us to put the entire blame on Manolo Marquez. The players have to share a lot of blame, because this entire the majority of this particular lot that is playing now has been playing for 5 6 years, and they are one of the most highly played highly paid players in the Indian Super League, and they carry a a huge amount of responsibility to shine for the team, and pull the rot the Indian football ecosystem is in at the moment. But all we see is them moving to clubs with more lucrative contracts
Yeah.
and settling for mediocre football, and that mediocrity, I think, is consuming Indian football eventually.
I think the FC Goa's CEO also, Ravi
Hmm, yeah,
Putkar, had brought up this issue that
yeah.
the clubs do feel like they have to take some
Hmm.
responsibility in having inflated these wages. But do you feel like the players have kind of like taken uh, for granted their position within the ecosystem, that
I
like
think.
that they're not motivated? Because to beat a team like Hong Kong, which is several rungs below India, there were reports that the federation would have paid them handsomely to beat them away. uh, I mean, like, we have had better results in Indian history, but then I don't think it needed this lucrative push for them to get the job done, especially at a time when uh, being a footballer in India is not a bad position. Like, you do get paid handsomely.
No, I think the offer that the AFF came up with, a 50,000 US dollars, was outright poor. Hong Kong is a team against which India took 54 seconds to open the scoring the last time the teams met. And if you see that match and this match, you'll just feel plain sad by the kind of temperament change that has happened, because India did not give a single moment for Hong Kong to settle in that match. The kind of attacks that went on and on and on. I think two or three shots hit the woodwork in that match, and we scored within the India scored within the first minute, and the match finished 4-0 in favor of India. When you're playing a team which is this lower ranked, and you fail to show any kind of attacking prowess, instead of providing incentive in the form of 50,000, the AIFF could have arranged an exposure trip to some second division side, maybe to South Korea, maybe to Europe, maybe to Asia in the next European window. That would have costed something close to a $50,000 as well. But providing them this financial incentive, and instead providing them with exposure trip, would have been an alternative plan, which would have given a longer, borne fruits in the longer run. So yeah, that is one thing. But talking about the responsibility for the players, I think, yeah, players are also are too settled into the job that they are. The other day I was talking to someone who is in the Indian football ecosystem, and they were talking about the player that is in question is earning around a 25 crore rupees in a 4.5 year contract at the moment, which is at par with what A grade cricketers earn at the moment. So when those kind of wages come into your account, you have to think about whether you want to settle in with a greater future, or take a pay cut, and maybe, and the alternative course of action for them would be earn half the money and play in the second division of Korea, or England, or somewhere around Asia. Something that these footballers don't want to do, especially because their clear intention is to have a better future after football. Because again, at the back of the mind, they have always been thinking that football will not ensure a proper future for you at an international level. So that catch 22 situation is something that these footballers need to understand. Especially the whole system needs to work together, and the temperament needs to change. Against Hong Kong, what India played was something that India played a similar game against China in the opening game of the Asian Games, where they tried to get into open spaces and tried to exploit it. But when you're playing a team which is much weaker than China, I expected a lot more attack, especially a similar performance to what they had in Calcutta, I think 3 years ago.
Mhm.
So when we talk about what needs to change, what do you think? What are the things that can change in the future for Indian football?
If you have to look at changes, like immediate change structurally within the ISL, we need to like try and get some of these forwards more playing time in the striking position. I mean, that's something which the AFF president Kalyan Chobe had addressed it yesterday in the press conference. Uh, but that's like from the short term point of view, I think that's the thing which needs to change, because clearly that's a issue which has been bothering us for quite some time. And from the coaching point of view, I would still want to stick with Manolo, because now he is free of his duties from FC Goa. I would like to give him some more time to like see if he can turn this tide. Purely because like I could see some changes within the playing style, which I like compared to what I've seen previously with Stamak. So I would still want to see what he can do with this team.
I'll also like to see Manolo keep working with the national team, especially because hardly a year is not genuinely a metric to look at what a manager can provide. Especially, and I would genuinely like to see if Manolo can is given the freedom to bring in more youngsters into the squad, especially because he has the history of nurturing much youngsters to become formidable players. Akash Mishra, Nikhil Pujari, now Abhishek Tekcham Singh, Ayush Dev Chetri. These are players which Manolo has created. Liston Colasso is another player who Manolo Marquez has contributed to his development. And I think the more youngsters coming into the squad, we saw a lot of youngsters getting their debuts under Manolo. And I really genuinely want to see him contribute to youth development, which could help India in the longer run. At least a year more or a year and a half more should be given to Manolo Marquez to help him and India progress in the longer run. So with that, we come to the end of our discussion. There's plenty to discuss and ponder on about the Indian football scenario. There have been discussions in the Indian football circles every week, every day, and we'll be bringing you all the updates that are happening in the ecosystem of Indian football as and when they happen. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with another discussion very soon.